After 20 years of hidden sadness, this CEO discovers an incredible song that changes everything. Scott Thompson looked out over the small Midwestern town he once called home, a place he thought he'd left behind. The air hummed with memories of laughter and music, but now it felt heavy with regret. He was a successful CEO now, yet the shiny veneer of his suit couldn't mask the deep ache in his chest. It hit him like an old song, familiar, haunting, and heartbreaking. Once, he was the rising star of the local music scene, strumming his guitar, chasing dreams of fame while his father played beside him. Those family gatherings were filled with music, joy, and connection, but slowly faded into awkward silences. He traded in his guitar for boardroom meetings, believing that financial success would bring him the happiness he desperately sought. But now, as he watched his neighbors struggle, the weight of their despair mirrored the heavy burden he carried. When the call came asking him to judge the local high school talent show, Scott hesitated. It was an invitation back to the life he abandoned. Music was the bridge between him and his father, one he feared had long since collapsed. He felt the old flame flicker at the thought of being in that auditorium, where he once felt alive. As he walked into the school gym, the familiar scent of nostalgia mixed with popcorn and hope surrounded him. Parents filled the seats, eyes glimmering with pride and anxiety. The performances began, each act a reminder of his lost dreams. Scott sat on the panel, heart racing, grappling with the truth that his relentless pursuit of success had left him disconnected from those he loved. And then Mia appeared, a shy girl with a trembling voice. She stepped on stage, and the room quieted to a hush. As she began to sing a song she wrote for her father, a veteran who struggled with depression, Scott felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. Her raw voice poured out her pain, each note striking a chord deep within him. It was as if she was telling his story, the longing for connection, the shadows of regret. He realized just how far he'd strayed from what truly mattered. Before he knew it, the show ended, but his emotions craved more than just applause. He needed to reach out, especially to his father, whose silence loomed like an unexploded bomb between them. But the years had built a wall, and Scott doubted he could break through it. Then, as he faced the world outside, whispers of fear and criticism began to swirl around him. His sudden yearning to advocate for mental health met cold shoulders and judgment from those who didn't understand. Weeks followed in turmoil as financial pressures threatened his business. He felt the pull between leadership and a deeper calling towards redemption. As plans stirred for a community fundraiser, something ignited within him. Inspired by Mia's song, Scott began to pen his own, a song filled with healing, love, and hope. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the night of the event approached, he battled waves of anxiety. Guitar in hand, Scott felt an overwhelming urge to share his story, to connect. On stage, he stood, heart pounding, surrounded by faces eager for something real. All those years, he had chased success when what he truly wanted was to heal. With the first strum of his guitar, Scott breathed deeply, inviting the audience into his soul. But just as he began to play, doubt crept in. What if his vulnerability fell flat in the midst of their struggle? What if they didn't want to hear it? Yet, as he looked out at the faces before him, he realized they were all searching for the same thing, a way to feel less alone. Would his song finally be the bridge that brought them all together, or would it become another echo lost in the silence? The lights dimmed in the gymnasium, creating an intimate atmosphere. Scott took a deep breath, grounding himself. The crowd watched with hopeful eyes, and he could feel their expectations weighing on him. They wanted connection, healing, something genuine in a world that often felt too heavy to bear. He could not let these souls down. He needed to pour everything into this moment. His fingers rested softly on the guitar strings, a comfort he hadn't felt in years. Every second stretched into infinity as memories surged through him. He thought of his father, the man who once sang next to him, laughter interlaced with melody. Scott wished he could turn back time and tell him how much he revered those days, how cherished those evenings of music had been. As he began to play, the first note rang out a fragile sound that seemed to bounce around the gym, filling the space with unspoken promises. He sang about pain, about love, and about the power of music to heal even when it seemed impossible. With each verse, he changed. The man who had built walls around his heart slowly began to dismantle them. He poured out his heart like ink staining the pages of a long-lost songbook. It was raw, it was real. The audience began to sway, some even wiped away tears. Faces brightened, connections were forming in the collective heartbeat of that room. Just as Scott hit the chorus, he locked eyes with Mia, who stood in the front row, her expression a mixture of awe and admiration. It fueled him. He remembered the nerves, the half-finished lyrics, and the doubt that once consumed him. Now, he was sharing something vital, universal. He glanced away, letting go of the fear that had overshadowed his heart for so long. When the song came to an end, a silence filled the room, palpable and heavy with emotion. Then, it erupted. Applause, shouts, and even laughter mixed with tears in a mosaic of human expression. Scott smiled through it all, but deep inside, he longed for something more. His mind drifted back to unfinished conversations with his father. Could he muster the courage to reach out now, to let the music guide him home? As he stepped off stage, the adrenaline coursing through him, he felt lighter somehow. Not just because he had shared his story, but because he had ignited a spark in himself. Others approached him, clapping him on the shoulder, offering gratitude for the honesty in his song. All around him, hope flickered like embers, growing brighter, but that feeling of exhilaration dwindled as he caught sight of his father's face in the crowd, watching from the back, expression unreadable. Scott's heart raced again. The reunion he had avoided loomed larger than life, filling him with both anticipation and dread. Here was a chance to reconnect, to bridge the chasm of silence that had yawned between them for years. But what if his song wasn't enough? What if he couldn't find the right words to bring his father back into his life? The echo of unresolved history hung between hope and uncertainty. In that pivotal moment, Scott realized that vulnerability was his strength, yet the thought of facing his father still terrified him. Taking a deep breath, he stepped toward his dad, each stride heavy with emotion, the air thickening with unspoken words. Would he take the plunge and face the painful truth of their distance? Could he dig deep enough to ensure that music was no longer just a bridge, but a pathway to true connection? As he reached his father and opened his mouth to speak, the crowd's cheers faded into a whisper, replaced by the high stakes of one question: would his father embrace the chance for reconciliation, or would this moment slip away like so many before? Scott halted just a few paces from his father, the weight of years pressing down on his chest. His throat tightened, the moment he anticipated and dreaded all at once finally upon him. His father's face was a canvas of emotions, too complex to decipher, and Scott struggled to find the words that could paint their unshared history in a way that led to healing. "Dad," he started, but his voice cracked, faltering under the immense tension. The crowd, which had been nothing but supportive moments ago, faded into ghosts, their silent encouragement fading like distant chatter, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of raw vulnerability. There was a flicker of recognition in his father's eyes. The first note of their strained past echoed in the space, loaded with fragments of disappointment, anger, and unspoken love. Scott felt himself tremble slightly. Would he even remember how to reach out? A breath hung between them, thick with anticipation, then burst apart like a bubble. You were really good tonight." His father's voice was unexpectedly soft, yet the formality felt like a barrier. "Thank you," Scott replied, the words tumbling out. I needed to share where I've been." He shifted on his feet, desire overwhelming him to lay everything out on the table. "Where you've been," his father echoed, voice flat, a trace of skepticism sparking in his eyes. Scott felt his heart pound louder, the divide between them sharp and cold. It's been a long time, Dad, he said, the truth of those words rolling off his tongue. I miss playing music with you. I miss us. Every vowel in the last phrase dwelled in the air, raw and vulnerable, a plea for understanding. His father's expression shifted, the armor he wore cracking just slightly. You think one song, one performance is supposed to change everything? The doubt lingered like a bitter aftertaste, leaving Scott feeling reckless and exposed. No, Scott admitted, lowering his gaze for a moment to gather himself. But maybe it's a start. We both have our stories, things we've bottled up. This was just the first step for me. The honesty surged within him, intertwining with hope. His dad studied him, searching for clarity in the storm of emotions. It was painful to witness, but necessary. I heard you tonight, he finally said, his voice a mixture of regret and admiration. I didn't imagine you'd want me back in your life. Of course I want you back, Scott implored, his voice rising slightly. I want to understand, and I hope you can forgive me for not reaching out sooner. I felt lost without knowing how to bridge this gap. Silence engulfed them again. His father's expression softened, the rigidity loosening as he considered the words that could break this cycle of distance. You need to understand, he started but stopped short, his gaze falling. Let us take it one step at a time, Scott suggested, his heart racing. Just as I took that first step to sing tonight. There was a spark in his father's eyes. Was it hope? Or fear? Before Scott could analyze the possibility, the crowd erupted in applause again, reminding them both of the moment they had just shared. Would you maybe want to come to the next performance? Scott ventured, his pulse quickening with vulnerability. His father met his gaze, a mixture of surprise and tentative warmth flashing before the walls began to rebuild. Let us see, he said lightly, but with an undertone of something more. Scott felt that glimmer of hope embolden him, but uncertainty still loomed like a shadow. As he turned to leave, the ghost of a smile slipped onto his father's face, leaving Scott breathless with a hint of cautious optimism. There it was, a thread, a connection, something to cling to amidst the turmoil of their shared past, but the doubts resurfaced. Would this be enough to mend what had been broken all those years ago? What if, despite their first step, the chasm between them remained too great to bridge? With one last look back, the promise of music still resonating in the air, Scott felt the weight of the moment shift. The next song he wrote would be for this chance a stepping stone toward healing wounds that ran deep. As he exited the gym, the glimmers of hope flickered brightly, but an unsettling thought gnawed at him. Would he find the courage to face the full truth of their past, or would they spiral back into silence once again? Scott stepped out into the cool night air, the world tangling around him like an old melody. Streetlights cast a golden hue, illuminating the paths ahead and behind, but his mind was still locked in that tense moment with his father. He took a deep breath, feeling the hint of a familiar tune brimming in his chest, just waiting to be played. His heart pounded with a new rhythm, a mix of hope and anxiety. It took a long time to get to that point, a place where their complicated past could swirl in the air like the notes of his performance. Maybe that was a real first step, he thought, but doubts crept in, whispering the old doubts that had lingered so long. He pulled out his phone, fingers trembling as he scrolled through his contacts. There was a familiar name, Lena. She had been his best friend since they were kids, always urging him to reach out. He couldn't hold back the urge any longer. He tapped her name and pressed call, waiting anxiously. Hey, Scott. How did it go? She answered brightly, her voice like sunlight breaking through clouds. It was intense, he said after a long pause. I talked to my dad. Lena's excitement was palpable on the other end. Really? That's huge. How was it? He said I was good. But there was this wall. I don't know if he's ready to let me back in. He put it out like it's my responsibility to bridge this gap. Scott, that's a start. You opened the door. Maybe it's time for him to come through, too. Yeah, I guess so, Scott replied, dragging his fingers through his hair in frustration. But what if he doesn't? What if this just goes nowhere? Then try again. You always told me music is about connection, Lena reminded him gently. Write the next song with him in mind. Use that as your bridge. As the conversation continued, Scott felt his resolve solidify. He could pour his heart into a new song, something that echoed his past yet promised a future. He imagined melodies that wove through their stories, breaking down walls with every note. After hanging up, Scott strolled toward his favorite cafe, the comforting hum of chatter welcoming him. The barista recognized him immediately. Back for another round of inspiration? She asked, grinning. Something like that, he replied, returning her smile. He settled at a table by the window with his laptop. As he sipped his coffee, thoughts of his father drifted to the surface again. He opened a blank document and typed the first few lines. You were the chord I never played. The words flooded forth, his fingers racing across the keyboard. Each line seemed to carry pieces of himself and his father, weaving their stories together, converging through music. Hours passed, and in the dim light, Scott lost track of everything except that voice inside, urging him to dig deeper. This isn't just about me, it's about him too, he thought, and with every keystroke, he began to feel a spotlight shining on those hidden corners of their lives, illuminating truths that had remained in darkness for far too long. His pulse quickened as he hit save, feeling almost like a renewed spirit. Could this song be the thread that would pull his dad closer? Just then, a notification caught his eye, a new message from his father. The uncertainty returned, twisting at his stomach. I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe I should come to your next performance. Hope fluttered inside him, but so did fear. What if he didn't live up to expectations? What if the song failed to capture their fractured history? With shaky hands, Scott began to draft a reply, the stakes feeling higher than ever. As he typed, one question pushed to the forefront of his mind. Could a single song really change everything? Scott stared at his screen, fingers hovering above the keys, letting the weight of the moment settle into his bones. He inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with the smell of roasted coffee and determination. His dad's message buzzed in his mind, blending with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Could he really write something that mattered enough to shift their relationship? The cafe was a buzz of energy, but Scott felt like he was in a bubble. He could see people chatting, laughing, and enjoying their lives, while his world felt tangled and heavy. Papers rustled, cups clinked, but all he could hear was the quiet uncertainty in his mind. He took another sip of his coffee, searching for clarity. Just right, he told himself. Let the music guide you. Scott turned back to the screen, his fingers finally finding the keys. He let the words spill out without caution. Each line felt like an untold story breaking free. I thought the silence was just the way it's meant to be, echoed within him. The line resonated, bringing flashes of memories that felt both tender and painful, the sound of his father's laughter, the silence that stretched between them during hard times. He could see the notes dancing in his mind, even hear the melody shaping around the lyrics. A mix of nostalgia and yearning filled him. This wasn't just a song, it was a lesson he was learning. With every chord he envisioned, he wanted his father to hear not only the music but the emotions wrapped within it. When the final line finally flowed out, Scott felt a rush of exhilaration course through him. Something inside flickered like a spark igniting. This was his bridge, a patchwork of nostalgia, of regret, but also of hope. Will you listen? He wrote, the last question echoing like a final note held in a performance that he read the words over, a swell of mixed emotions pushing forward. Could this truly be a way back to each other? Could they overcome the icy barrier of years? Before he could second-guess himself, he hit send. The action felt monumental, a small but mighty act of faith. He leaned back in his chair, heart racing. The next minutes played out like an agonizing wait. He tapped his fingers against the table, lost in the sound of his thoughts. What if his father didn't respond? What if the invitation hung in the air, unanswered? Just then, a familiar face across the room caught his eye: Lena, waving excitedly as she entered the cafe. Relief surged through him. No matter what happened with his dad, he had her. She moved through the crowd, her presence instantly warming his heart. "Hey!" she exclaimed, taking a seat across from him. "You look like you've just solved a Rubik's Cube. What is going on?" "I think I might be just written something important," he admitted, still trying to catch his breath. "Like, this song might change my life important?" she teased, teasing a grin from him. "Something like that," he said, the laughter chasing away some of the lingering tension. As they chatted, sharing cups of coffee and dreams, Scott cast a glance back at his phone. His heart skipped as a reply popped up. The message from his dad illuminated the screen, and for a moment, time froze. "Scott, I want to hear it. What's it about?" His pulse quickened. Here it was the beginning of something new. But, of course, a question still loomed large, one he hadn't prepared for. Was he ready to unfold his heart? As if sensing his thoughts, Lena nudged him. "What's wrong? You look like you just saw a ghost." "I'm just thinking about how to explain it," he admitted, fingers tapping the edge of his phone. "Why not just tell him how you feel?" she suggested, a spark of encouragement in her eyes. Scott pondered that. Could the answer be so simple, yet profound? With a new burst of determination, he responded, diving into the emotions behind the song, laying himself bare one note at a time. But as he typed, one thought nagged at him: would his father truly understand the weight of it all? He hesitated, finger hovering over the send button once more. What if the truth was too much? Would the melody still resonate after the song was played? In the stillness that followed, Scott came to a realization that tasted both bitter and sweet. Whatever happened next, the music was already weaving their lives together. Would the rhythm of their shared past be enough to create a new harmony? As he hit send, he felt a flutter of hope mixed with anxiety. The stage was set, and the show was just beginning. But beneath that hope lingered a question: what if the truth was a note too high to reach? Scott's heart raced, a jumble of emotions sweeping through him. He pressed his phone against the table, desperate for a moment to process everything. Lena leaned forward, her eyes scanning his face, sensing the storm brewing beneath his calm demeanor. "Hey, breathe," she said, her voice soothing. "What is going on in that head of yours?" He took a deep breath, letting the air fill his lungs. "What if my dad doesn't get it? What if my song doesn't resonate?" Lena shook her head, a determined spark glinting in her eyes. "You're already reaching out. That's the first step. Just being honest with him could change everything." On her encouragement, he pulled out his phone again, staring at the screen. The chat thread with his father glowed like a beacon. He could feel the weight of the anticipation hanging in the air. What if their conversation changed everything? Then, without any forethought, he typed, "It's about the silence between us, Dad. How it seems like we haven't really talked for years. I've been searching for a way to express how much I miss you and the way things used to be. The song is my bridge back to you." As he hit send, Scott's heart sank and soared at the same time. The vulnerability hit him. This wasn't just about music anymore. It was life and love and loss. They were all tangled up in that message. "Okay, what next?" Lena asked, sensing the gravity of the moment. "I guess we wait," he said, feeling the heavy silence of the cafe wrap around them once again. Just as hope flickered, doubt crept back in. Would his father truly be ready to take that leap with him, or would the chasm remain too wide? Minutes slipped by like hours. Scott sipped his coffee, now cold, as he replayed memories in his mind. The fleeting moments with his dad from childhood cast a shadow of longing over him. The joy of those days felt so distant. Would they ever find their way back? Then, his phone buzzed again. This time, Scott's heart nearly stopped. His father had replied. "Scott, I appreciate your honesty. I'm keen to hear the song. Can we meet to talk?" Overwhelmed, Scott caught Lena's eye, his expression shifting from dread to a whirlwind of excitement. "He wants to meet. That's amazing!" Lena exclaimed, clapping her hands. "When?" "Tomorrow," he read aloud, an anxious grin spreading across his face. "But don't overthink it. Just be yourself," she urged, her smile unwavering. "This is a huge step." Scott bit his lip, letting go of the tension in his chest. She was right, this could be the moment they began to rebuild their relationship. But the looming question of what to say next gripped him tightly. He had so much he wanted to express, but would he find the right words in that moment? Lena sensed his hesitance. "You've got this. Just think of it like the song. Share your heart." He took a deep breath, visualizing the melody again, the rhythm of their lives intertwining like notes dancing together. Tomorrow would be a chance to turn the page, to write a new chapter. But the voice of uncertainty stirred within him. Would sharing his truth create a harmony or outright discord? The cafe filled with laughter around them, but to Scott, it all faded into a muted backdrop. What would happen when he faced his father? As the light streamed through the cafe windows, illuminating the paper strewn across their table, Scott felt the pressure of all the unspoken words and emotions colliding within him. Tomorrow was coming quickly, and with it, the promise of possibility or the risk of rejection. With that weight pressing on his heart, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything hinged on that meeting. Could a conversation really bridge the gap they'd let drift so far apart? As he gazed at Lena, her unwavering support felt like a tether to reality. But deep down, he knew tomorrow might reveal what he truly feared most, the possibility of failure. Would he be ready to face the melody of their shared past, or would the silence return to echo between them once more? Scott's night was a restless tumble of thoughts and emotions. Each ticking minute felt excruciating as he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the upcoming meeting pressing down on him like an anchor. Memories flitted through his mind, bright and painful, his father lifting him up to touch the stars as a child, teaching him how to ride a bike, the way laughter hung in the air during family game nights. Those days seemed surreal now, buried under years of silence and misunderstanding. How had they allowed distance to creep in and take over? As dawn broke, Scott could hear the world outside waking up, birds chirping, people bustling about. It was a typical morning, but for him, this day felt monumental. He dressed slowly, each article of clothing a reminder of the journey ahead. There was an electric hum in the air, a mix of hope and anxiety swirling within him. He grabbed his guitar, fingers brushing over the strings, recalling the rhythms and melodies he'd written. Each note felt like a piece of his heart, aching to be shared and understood. Would it be enough to bridge the chasm with his father? He inhaled deeply, focusing on the song, willing it to guide him through the uncertainty. Lena texted him a quick good luck message, and he felt a warmth rush over him. She was the constant reminder that he wasn't alone in this. He clutched the phone tightly, the screen lighting up with her encouraging words. When the time came to leave, Scott's heart raced. He stepped outside, the crisp air invigorating him. He could feel the earth shifting underneath him, each step heavy with purpose. Arriving at the cafe, he pushed through the door, the little bell chime resonating in the air. There, at a corner table, sat his father. He looked older, wearier, but there was something almost vulnerable about the way he shifted in his seat, anticipation etched on his face. Scott felt a pang in his chest. This was the man he had adored, the man he had missed. As Scott slid into the seat across from him, an awkward silence lingered between them. Words hung unspoken, heavy with years of unresolved emotions. He looked into his father's eyes, searching for a hint of understanding, a way back into the warmth he used to know. "Hey," his father finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "Hey." Scott managed a smile, his heart pounding loudly. "I got your message." It had meant a lot to me, his father admitted, looking down at his latte. Scott took a breath, feeling the moment shift. I wanted you to know how much I've missed you. It's hard to put into words, but my song, he trailed off, the weight of his feelings cascading over him like a tidal wave. It's like you found a key to unlock what has been trapped inside for so long, his father interrupted, looking up now, his gaze piercing and open. The words sparked something in Scott. That key was just within reach, and he knew he had to make the leap. It's about everything we've lost, the silence between us. I want to fix this. Tension crackled in the air, like static before a storm. Would this be the moment to break free from the chains of their past? Let me hear it, his father urged, leaning forward slightly. Scott nodded, feeling the pull of the music. He pulled his guitar onto his lap, fingers finding the chords. The first notes floated into the air, the melody resonating with the very essence of his pain and longing. With each strum, he poured his heart into that song, hoping it would bridge the years, but as he sang the final notes, uncertainty crept back in. Would his father receive what he was trying to say? Would this be their turning point, or would it lead them astray once more? As silence enveloped them once more, Scott held his breath, eyes fixed on his father, waiting for a response. What would he say in return? The moment felt like a precipice. Either they would find harmony or risk sinking back into the silence that had haunted them for so long. With everything hanging in the balance, Scott felt his stomach twist with nerves. Would they rise together or fall apart? The silence stretched, wrapping around Scott like a heavy fog. He felt exposed as he awaited his father's reaction, every second amplifying his fears. The cafe buzzed around them, but in their corner, time seemed to freeze. His father finally moved, breaking eye contact to stare blandly at the table. Scott could see the wheels turning in his father's mind, each thought a potential barrier to the connection he craved. With a trembling hand, Scott sipped his coffee, steeling himself for whatever came next. I didn't know you felt that way, his father murmured, his voice cracking slightly. Scott could barely breathe. Would that statement be a door opening or a window closing? I thought we lost it all, you know. Scott replied, voicing his deep-seated fears. But that song, it's for us. It's all those years of silence, of hurt, just pouring out. For a moment, his father's expression shifted, the distance seemed to soften, just a fraction. Maybe I didn't know how to express it either, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Life gets in the way. I never wanted it to be like this. Scott saw the glimmer of vulnerability in his father's eyes. That had been the missing piece, the realization that both of them had been waiting for the other to reach out first. I want to change it. I want us to talk again, to know each other again, Scott urged, his heart racing with the urgency of his words. His father looked up then, a flicker of hope mixed with fear dancing across his features. What if we can't go back? What if it's too late? Those words hit Scott hard. He fought against the rising tide of sadness, reminding himself of the small steps they could take. It's never too late. It's about moving forward. We can't rewrite the past, but we can create a new future together. A long pause settled between them. Scott's pulse thrummed loudly in his ears, each beat a plea for understanding. Finally, his father leaned back in his chair, considering. You're right. I've hidden from it all for too long. We lost time, but I don't want to lose any more. Scott felt a rush of emotion, the room's ambience painfully real in its warmth and weight. Let us start with small things. Family dinners, coffee, music, we can rebuild from there. I need my dad back. The corners of his father's mouth twitched, warring between a smile and unshed tears. I'd like that, he said, sincerity coloring his voice. I'm so sorry for everything. I don't want you to feel lost anymore. Relief surged through Scott. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it felt like the start of something important. Just then, the barista approached their table with a fresh pot of coffee. He filled their mugs, the aroma sharp and grounding. It felt like a good omen, a sign that maybe things could brew anew between them. As they engaged in cautious, tentative conversation, Scott realized that the act of reaching out had begun to thaw the years of ice that had formed. Unexpected laughter broke through, the sound wrapping around them, and for the first time in a long while, Scott felt light. But in the back of his mind lingered a question that shadowed the moment: would the resolve to change be strong enough to withstand the challenges ahead? In the midst of his father's soft laughter, Scott contemplated their future, perilous yet promising. The door to reconciliation was ajar, but would they both be brave enough to step through? With that thought, Scott looked up, determination in his gaze. Before they could drift into comfortable conversation, he needed to share one last thing. He cleared his throat. "Dad, there's one more song I wrote." His father's expression turned curious, anticipation glimmering in his eyes. Would this song be the final unlocking of layers yet hidden? Scott took a deep breath, the weight of his father's gaze making him feel both exposed and exhilarated. He glanced down at the table for a moment, collecting his thoughts. This song was more than just melodies and chords, it held fragments of moments, each a lesson learned and a hurt masked. It felt like letting go of secrets that had kept him shackled for too long. "Okay, here it goes," he said, his voice steadying as he picked up his guitar, which had been leaning against the wall near their table. The familiar feel of the instrument calmed his nerves. This one's called Unspoken. He strummed a few chords, the notes flowing like a river breaking through barriers. Each strum echoed the raw emotions he'd bottled up: resentment, hope, and the desire for connection. As he began to sing, the cafe's ambience faded into the background, leaving just the two of them, father and son, suspended in this moment. "This is about everything we never said," he sang softly, his eyes locked on his father's. "About battles we lost, the love we missed when words didn't come. It's a pledge to break the silence, to embrace what we've been too afraid to face." His father's expression shifted as the significance of the lyrics sank in. The initial curiosity melted into deeper contemplation. Scott poured out his heart, each note a step toward healing. The melody swirled around them, wrapping around the years of hurt like a soft embrace. When he finished, the cafe erupted in an unexpected wave of quiet applause. It felt surreal. The world outside faded, and all that remained was the raw connection forming at their table. Scott's heart raced as he met his father's eyes, searching for any signs of understanding, acceptance, or perhaps something more. His father looked moved, tears brimming in his eyes, shining like glass. "Wow," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That was beautiful. I didn't know you felt all that." "I didn't either, until I put it into music," Scott admitted, a slight smile breaking through the tension. "But it's true. It's how I feel." "I've been a fool, Scott," his father replied, shaking his head slightly. "I've missed so much. It's like I've been living in a fog myself." The vulnerability in his father's voice was poignant, like a door cracking open to a room long forgotten. Scott felt hopeful, but uncertainty also lingered. They were on the brink of something immense, but what would happen if faced with the complications of their past? "Dad," Scott said carefully, needing to tread this delicate ground, "what happens now? Can we really change things? Can we really be there for each other?" His father hesitated. The question lingered between them, heavy yet filled with possibilities. Scott held his breath, waiting for an answer that could reshape everything. After a long beat, his father finally nodded, resolving himself. "We have to try. I want to be a part of your life again. No more hiding." But just as relief washed over Scott, the barista interrupted their embrace of vulnerability. "Can I get you guys anything else?" Scott looked around, the world slowly coming back into focus as the distance around them receded. The buzz of chatter returned, but he felt different. He felt seen and understood. Turning back to his father, Scott knew a crucial moment was ahead. "What about that dinner? The one with the family? His father's brows furrowed slightly, as if wrestling with a sudden surge of anxiety. You mean, as in telling them everything? Like the song? Yeah. If we really want to move forward, we have to be honest, Scott replied, the fight welling up in his chest. His father sighed, staring contemplatively at the table. It may not be easy. But if it means healing, then yes. Scott's heart raced, a blend of fear and hope, the challenge ahead already visible. Could they face the repercussions of their past? Just as the weight of his father's resolve began to ground him, Scott felt a jitter of anxiety. They were willing to step forward, but was he ready for all the layers that would unfold? Dad, are you ready for this, really ready? Scott asked, the words tasting like both risk and promise. His father met his gaze, determination shining but laced with unspoken fears. There's no turning back now, is there? And with that, Scott knew they had taken the first true step into the unknown. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden glow as Scott took a deep breath. Today was the day. The day he would welcome his father back into his life. No more hesitations. No more lingering doubts. They had shared words that had woven their lives together with threads of hope, and now it was time to transform that hope into reality. Scott stood outside the front door of the cafe, anticipation bubbling within him. Today wasn't just a repeat of their last meeting, today was the first step toward healing all those years of silence. The plan was simple: gather the family, share the music, and begin rebuilding what had been lost. He could feel it deep down. This was the moment they had both been waiting for. As he walked inside, the laughter of his family filled the space, mingling with the aroma of coffee and fresh pastries. He spotted Lena near the corner, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she waved him over. She was his constant, a beacon of encouragement. You're here. She beamed, and for a split second, that energy rippled through him like musical notes. Yeah, I made it, he replied, his heart pounding with each step. Is everyone already here? She smiled, sensing the weight of his nerves. Taking a moment to scan the crowd, Scott's gaze landed on his father sitting at the table, laughter echoing around him as he animatedly spoke with Scott's siblings. The sight pulled at Scott's heart. There was warmth in his father's expression today, a subtle softness that had been missing from their past conversations. It felt like they were really on the brink of something wonderful. Hey, Dad. Scott called, moving toward him. The chatter faded slightly as he approached, every eye drawn toward the man who had once felt so far out of reach. Scott. You made it. His father's voice was buoyant, ready for him, just as Scott needed. Yeah, he said, feeling the warmth of connection radiate back at him. I wouldn't miss this. They exchanged smiles, and Scott felt a rush of hope wash over him. He wasn't sure how the evening would go, but he knew without a doubt that music would be the heart of the reunion. As the family gathered around, Scott picked up his guitar from its spot in the corner and strummed a few chords. The sound brought immediate attention, and with it, the familiar bindings of love washed over them, all ready to bridge the many years that had kept them apart. Hey, everyone, can I have your attention? Scott announced, feeling the rush of adrenaline course through him as he looked into the eager faces of his loved ones. A hush fell as they tuned into him, a circle of unspoken support forming around them. I wrote a new song that's really close to my heart. It's about mending ties and bridging gaps. He glanced over at his father, who watched intently, eyes glimmering with sparks of understanding. And hopefully, it's a journey we can take together. Then, with a deep breath, he began to play, the notes flowing effortlessly as he filled the air with his words, full of healing and the promises of rekindled love. Each strum met with heads nodding, families exchanging soft glances, and the whispers of connection unfurling between them. He poured his heart into the lyrics, expressing not only his pain but also their shared potential for healing. The music enveloped the room like a warm embrace, wrapping his family in a truth that had long been buried. As he finished his song, Scott's heart raced, filled with a raw sense of release. The room erupted in applause, but more importantly, Scott locked eyes with his father, who felt the weight of every word. That spark of vulnerability had ignited a flame. "Wow, son, that was incredible," his father said, emotion coloring his voice. "Thank you for sharing that. It means more than you know." Scott's smile was electric, heat rising in his chest. "No, thank you for being here with me. It's just the start, right?" Hope was reflected in his father's gaze, a silent promise that they would walk this journey together, shoulder to shoulder. The evening carried on, laughter erupting between songs and stories were shared, revealing layers of love that had been dormant for so long. Conversation flowed naturally, as if they'd been talking all along, fostering the connections they had once lost. Time flew as the family prepared to leave, but Scott felt an overwhelming sense of completion wash over him. He had dreamed of this moment, and now it was here. They were ready to shift the narrative, writing a new chapter together. As they filed out, Scott turned back for a moment, catching Lena's eye. "Thank you for everything, for believing in me," he said softly. "Always," she grinned, her support a constant reassurance in his life. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving a twilight glow. It felt like a celebration, a closing of chapters and an opening of new ones. Glancing up at the stars beginning to twinkle, Scott allowed himself to believe that all they had shared, all the music, had brought them here for a reason. As they walked toward their new beginning, Scott knew they weren't just participants in a family reunion. They were reclaiming a bond stronger than silence, filled with the melodies of love, laughter, and redemption. He felt fortunate and inspired, ready for what lay ahead. This was just the beginning. Now, you know the power of music, connection, and vulnerability. Don't let this moment slip away. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment below and share your feelings about this transformative ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this message about love and healing. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.